Hi everyone, this is Brian and welcome to my power case, The Department. You are going to practice a realistic case interview. If you are watching this on YouTube, I want you to comment on this video with your actual responses. I will then reply back with my assessment of your response as either good or great. Okay, let's get started. Our client is the Senior Vice President of HR for a North American telecommunications company which wants to reduce their HR costs. They believe they are spending too much in the HR department, which includes every HR related cost. They have two main questions. Are their HR costs too high? And if so, what are the opportunities to save costs? So with that said, pause the video now and write down any clarifying questions you have. Okay, to address any clarifications you may have had, our client and all the competitors just operate in the United States. Also, they do not have any specific numbers in mind for how much they want to reduce their costs by. So go ahead and take a few moments to lay down how you would approach this problem. Pause the video now, write down your structure, and then say it out loud. Now, I'm going to talk through an example of a good, typical case structure. Okay, this seems rather straightforward, so I'd like to understand how our HR costs compare to the competition. So I'd like to understand our costs and break those down into fixed costs and variable costs and understand how those have changed over time. And then I'd like to understand the competition's costs from both a fixed cost and a variable cost standpoint and see how those have changed over time, and also compare the competition's costs to our client's costs. Now go ahead and let me know where you want to start and why. Okay, pause the video for just a few moments, write down your key questions that you'd like to explore, and then say them out loud. Now, I'm going to talk through an example of a good, typical way of examining and uncovering. So I'd like to understand what is the breakdown of our costs, and specifically, do we know if those have changed over time, whether they be people costs or program costs. And then I'd like to understand how do these costs compare to the competition, and does the competition have a similar sized department than us, so we can make sure that the benchmark is a fair comparison. So here are some answers to your questions. In terms of costs, yes, you've identified similar buckets to how our client classifies their costs, which is talent acquisition, training and wellness programs, and labor. Now, in terms of benchmarks, we've looked at both our spend on talent acquisition and training and wellness programs, and the costs are in line there. So therefore, we do believe that we should look into labor further. Take a quick moment to look through this exhibit. Without doing any calculations just yet, how would you use this information to think through how to reduce our labor costs? What other information would you want to know? Okay, pause this video for just a few moments and talk out loud about how you'd estimate this. Now, I'm going to talk through an example of a good, typical way of uncovering key insights or identifying the nuggets. So I'd want to know how this information compares to the competition structure, and then I'd want to know how much we're paying in salaries on average for each level and how that compares to what the competition is paying. Perhaps we're offering too many benefits or too high of salaries or too high of bonuses for certain levels or all levels versus what the competition is paying. The client provided you with some additional information. They want you to calculate the cost savings they can get. Pause the video for just a few moments and talk out loud your math calculations. So here's an example of a good, typical way of doing this math. So there's 160 associates and there's 8 associates. So the ratio, so that means there's 20 managers needed, so we could save 10 managers. And now we have 20 managers over 5 managers ratio, so that means we need 4 directors. So we could save 2 directors.
And then, let's see, we can save managers. So we save 10 managers times 260,000 is 2.6 KK, which is 2.6 million. And then savings to directors is we can save the 2 directors times 360K a piece, which is 720K total. All right. And then we can save 80 associates because they are we can increase the efficiency. That's 80 times, we can increase the efficiency double. So 80 times 115K, which is 115 times 8, 0, 4, 8, 2, 1, 8, 9, 20 times 10K equals 9.2 million. So 9.2 million plus 3.3 equals 12.5 million dollars. So yeah, we can save around 12.5 million. Let's take a moment to discuss some of the risks to consider before we make a decision to reduce headcount. So pause the video for just a few moments and talk out loud and jot down some of your thoughts. Now, I'm going to talk through an example of a good, typical way to generate ideas. So we should be careful about cutting too much because this could affect morale and productivity levels, and the layoffs might also be picked up in the local press. So, we should be sure to manage our communications carefully. Let's say the senior vice president walks in and wants a quick overview of your findings and recommendations. What would you tell him? Now, I'm going to talk through an example of a good, typical recommendation. We found that to save costs, we can reduce the number of employees across staff, management, and director levels, and this would lead to about $13 million in total cost savings. However, this could lead to some morale and PR issues, and so as a next step, we should investigate these areas further so we can mitigate the risk of both appropriately.
Now that you finished the case, I want to remind you to comment on this video with your actual responses. I will then reply back and score each of your responses as either good or great. Go ahead and pause the video now so you can see how I would grade you. What you just saw was a realistic example among the top tier consulting firms. The responses that you heard are what I would consider to be good, but not great answers. Unfortunately, these merely good responses will not get you an offer from the top tier consulting firms. Given the intense degree of the competition, only great performance will virtually guarantee an offer. If you were to take away just one thing, it is this fact. The bar to pass is much higher than you think. You need to see and practice what great performance looks like. So to see the same case with a top 1% performance, just go to passthecase.com/great.